Brad Hawbaker. Man.
How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Man, I've been threatening you for a long time that I was going to have you on. I know. That I was going to have you on Jazz Piano Skills. And here we are, finally. Your nightmare has come true. So, man, we've known each other for a long time, man. We've been studying jazz piano together how long now, man?
Exactly 6 years. We're starting year 7 years. Yeah, November of 2018.
Wow, man, that's unbelievable, man. And it's been a fabulous journey just watching your growth from day one, from our very first lesson 6 years ago to the current time. It's just been a joy, man, to watch you. I mean, literally hit the grindstone, man, and you've been humping it, man, busting butt for the last 6 years, and it shows in your playing. And we're going to talk about that. But before we do, this is one of my favorite things. I love having folks like you on Jazz Piano Skills because your journey, your experience is a journey and experience shared by many Jazz Piano Skills listeners. So it's always a thrill to have somebody on like yourself to kind of share that. So we all, all of us as aspiring jazz pianists, realize that we're not in this boat alone, right? That we all experience a lot of the same hurdles and the same frustrations and challenges with this journey. And so it's great to have you on, Brad. I appreciate you taking time today to carve out some time to share your journey and your story with us. So with that being said, what I want to do is kind of turn the microphone over to you and kind of, and I'd love to know this too, man. Just a little bit about your background as a child, music, your family's background. How in the world did we get to this point where you decided to study jazz piano? So, my friend, the microphone is yours. Tell us your life story.
Okay. Well, so we had a piano in the house when I was a kid, and it was kind of a piece of furniture. Nobody really played it.
Right.
And I was just fascinated by it, and I just thought it was, just a really neat machine, and you would look at it and it just looks, like how does somebody even begin to play this thing? And eventually they got rid of it, and they got me a little keyboard, as kind of a consolation. And when I was a child, I asked my parents, hey, do you think I could get piano lessons? And they were like, I don't think you're going to like that. So that didn't happen. But I did. They did get me a violin when I got to sixth grade, so that I could get into orchestra because I wanted to get in there. And I was in orchestra for 4 years. And I started working. Non-professional jobs, high school jobs when I was 16, and by 18 I decided that I wanted to get a piano, and so I bought like a keyboard, like a Yamaha weighted keyboard, and bought it at Brook Mays, had it on layaway, and I'd come in with my paycheck, and eventually I brought it home, and I decided to start taking lessons, because I don't know anything.
Yeah.
So
right.
So I started taking classical lessons, and when I had originally had this conception in my head of what I wanted to do, I had a very naive idea that I want to be able to just sit down and play, and I did the classical lessons for a couple of years, and I got up to kind of an intermediate level, and I was starting to get to the age where I had to start to pick a major. So I go back to my parents, and I was like, I think I'd like to study music, and they were
I know what's coming.
yeah, they were like, well.
You're not going to like that.
Do you want to teach? No, not particularly. Do you think that you have the chops to be like a performer? No, not really. It's like, well, this is a great plan you have here. But tell you what, if you want to do that, you can take out student loans. However, if you would like to come to your senses, we'd be more than happy to pay your way for a business degree or an engineering degree. So I went to North Texas because I wanted to be near, the jazz program.
Right.
But I ended up not taking any stuff there.
Yeah.
Any classes, and I got a business degree.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
So.
Well, I wonder how many.
I
wonder how many guys holding business degrees, guys and gals holding business degrees and engineering degrees that would have been great jazz pianists if their parents would have only allowed them.
Yeah. Well, I will say this. So, I mean, I was still taking lessons, and eventually I decided that, the classical lessons, they're not getting me towards my original vision of where I wanted to go. And, I was like, who can just sit down and play, it's like, well, jazz musicians can sit down and play. And later on, I found out, like, that's the thing that people can teach. Like, they can teach that? Like, how do you teach somebody how to make something up?
Right.
How does one even make something up?
Right. How do you go about that? Yeah, right.
Right, yeah. And it's like, oh, they can teach that. Okay, well, so I started taking lessons there, and eventually school started getting hard. And so I shifted my focus there, and I stopped taking lessons. And eventually I hit a plateau with my own playing because I wasn't getting guidance, and I didn't know that I was doing the wrong things, and I just stopped playing.
Right.
And my mother, she decided that she wanted to buy me a piano. She wanted to buy me an acoustic piano. She was like, yeah, you have the Yamaha and that's fine, but I think you ought to have, an acoustic piano. And she's, searching out for like a deal. She wants a deal. So she's like looking, and she'll like send me, this post from Craigslist, or, this post from this other thing. And I'm like, I don't know what you're looking for, but I'm pretty sure you get what you pay for.
Yeah. Your mom's got a guilty conscience right now because she's trying to, she sees it. I see what's going on here. She's feeling guilty after all these years going like, I'm going to buy it.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. So, she one day, we buy this house, and we move in like August of 2018, and she calls me one day out of the blue, and she's like, I found a grand piano, and I'm like, okay, and she's like, it's a Steinway. I'm like, oh, okay. And
wow.
She's like, it's in a consignment store. And I'm like, you found a Steinway in a consignment store. It's like, yeah, I think it's pretty good. So why don't you come down here and take a look at it? So I go down there, and she's like, what do you think? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know anything about a piano. So I call up a previous teacher who was also a piano tuner, sorry. And I was like, hey, can you come out here and check this out? So he sends a tuner out, and the guy, and I'm like, well, what do you think? And he's like, well, look, if you don't buy it, I will. So I was like,
Right.
So
right. Wow.
It's actually sitting right here. This is it.
That is fantastic, man.
It is the greatest gift anybody's ever gotten me. And shortly after that, I started taking lessons with you. And I think the other part of your question was other people in your family. I have half siblings. I have a brother that plays guitar. I have a sister who plays piano. I have another sister who in high school played flute.
Yeah.
My mom used to busk in Zurich. She lived in Zurich for 4 years, and she would busk, and my mother's kind of tall, so she would busk, and her and her friend would go and busk with their guitars, and then they would go and buy beer with their earnings. She was 14, I think.
Are you sure she was a jazz musician then, right?
No, maybe. I don't know what she was playing.
Oh, that's hilarious, man. So, okay, so back up a second. The violin, I'm curious about the violin side of things. Okay, so no piano as a child, right? They discouraged you from that. But you started playing violin, right?
Yeah.
And how long did that last?
4 years.
4 years. Wow. And obviously the violin instruction was traditional classical violin lessons. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And during that time, were you thinking, like, as you were sitting there, bowing back and forth, were you thinking like, all I wanted to do was play the piano, and here I am?
No, I think I kind of made my peace with it. I mean, I still had the keyboard around, and
Yeah.
I would tell you though, like the my issue with the classical education is you can get up to speed really quickly and you can play songs, but you don't understand the mechanics of it, and
Right.
you're
Right.
just like, this is magic. I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand why that note sounds good and that note doesn't sound good. It's just magic.
Yeah, it's what I call, pushing dots and playing dots and buttons, right? And that dot means push that button, and that dot means push that button. I don't have any idea why they work, but I'm going to just follow the directions here and push the buttons as I'm directed to do so.
Right.
So, okay, so was it your desire to you had this inkling, right? This notion that you wanted to play music, but you wanted to, as you said, you wanted to be able to make things up, right?
Yeah.
So somewhere deep inside you, man, this was, I mean, the jazz musician was there, right? Because you were like, wow, very similar. When I was a young kid, I remember telling my parents that I wanted to be able to, I didn't say make things up. I said I wanted to be able to play by ear. That's another very common expression, right? Play by ear. And but make stuff up, play by ear. It's kind of pointing us all in one direction, right? It's pointing us to the study of jazz, right? So okay, so that's fascinating. So now here you are, an adult. You have your Steinway piano that your mom, with a guilty conscience, bought you because she's reflected upon the child abuse that she's inflicted upon you from not, not giving you piano lessons. So now you got your Steinway, and off to the races you go to study jazz. Now you had, before you and I hooked up, you had I remember you said you had another piano teacher, right? Were you studying jazz with that piano teacher?
I had classical teachers, and I started with classical teachers, and then going back to the magic, like not knowing how this stuff works, and realizing that it wasn't really getting me closer to where my vision was.
Yeah, yeah.
I jumped ship, and I went to jazz.
Yeah, good.
And then
good.
I was taking lessons in that, basically until I had to shift my focus to my studies and let the dream die a little.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
But now, man, I gotta say, now you've been gangbusters, man. Ever since you and I've connected, you've, like I said, nose to the grindstone. You've been cranking, man. You've been cranking. And so we're gonna talk about that and your approach. And I want you to share that with listeners, because I think so many people will benefit from it, because you're very organized, you're very structured, which I'm preaching all the time about. Things have to be formulaic, very simplistic conceptually, so that you have a shot at it physically. You do all of this very, very well. But before we talk about that, share with everyone what you do for a living.
I am a programmer. I work for a software consultancy, and
Yeah. Which when you came in and you told me that what you did, I said, hey, bro, you perfect. I mean, you have the brain for jazz piano. I mean, you have the brain necessary to make things up, because let's face it, man, as a coder, what are you doing all day? You're making stuff up, man. You're just making it
You're
up.
solving problems. Yeah,
that's right. That's what you do.
Problems out of thin air. Yeah,
that's right.
It's they're very related skill sets in a way.
Very, very much so. It's funny. I don't know if I told you this, but 33 years ago, when the Dallas School of Music started. Now think about this, man. 33 years ago, we're talking about what, like 1992, in that area, and so you know that. We were trying to figure out how we were going to do scheduling, and I was trying to find some kind of software, and this is at the beginning of, remember those stores like CompUSA and Computer City? You'd walk
Yeah.
in and they have software applications, and I'd spend hours in there I'd be in there spending hours looking for the application that was capable of doing scheduling, but with certain parameters, and there was never any canned software that would do that was a perfect fit. There was no, they always had limitations. And so I said, forget this. I'm going to write my own software to do a schedule.
It's ambitious.
It is. So I bought a book. You're going to laugh because you're like a real coder. I was a pretend coder. I bought a book on Visual Basic.
Okay. Yeah.
Does that language still exist? Visual Basic?
It still exists. It's not as popular as it was in the 90s.
Yeah.
And it's still around, and there's still quite a bit of it. In fact, if you want to do macros inside of like Office applications, like Excel, for instance, if you want to make Excel macros, then you're doing it in Basic. I think they support other languages now too, but they for the longest time it was only Basic.
Well, that's exactly what I did, because I used Microsoft's Excel as the engine. I used Visual Basic as the language. I think it was called Visual Basic for Applications, something like that, right?
Yeah, VBA. Yeah, I have a book about it. It's back there.
There you go, man. So you'll get a kick out of this, Brett. I literally went to Barnes and Noble. I bought a book on Visual Basic for application for dummies. I said, that's it right there. That's my book.
Yeah.
So I got that. I got a couple other Visual Basic books, and I started reading about how to code, use language to have the computer do what I needed it to do for scheduling. And I remember sitting at the kitchen table reading Visual Basic coding and typing, doing a little examples to see how it worked. And I literally remember this thought. I leaned back in my chair and I said to myself, I know this. I've been here. This is the same thought process, a different keyboard, but still a keyboard.
It is still a keyboard. Yeah.
It's still a keyboard,
yeah.
Right? And
yeah.
I remember consciously being aware of that the skill sets were the thought process and solving problems and thinking things through and options. And I remember it very vividly thinking, wow, this is very, very, very similar to jazz. And so I wrote a whole application that ran our scheduling for years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, based on Visual Basic. Yeah, so
that's awesome.
So anyway, so when you came in and you said you were a computer programmer, I went, bro. I mean, come on, man. You're gonna be playing Oscar Peterson here shortly. So
I've relayed that to a couple of my coworkers and the programmers. They always love that story.
I bet they do. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So, okay, so this is what you do for a living. So you're a computer programmer by day, you're a jazz pianist by night and on the weekends. Because honestly, man, with the work that you do, every week when we get together for a lesson and you come in with your binder and all the stuff that you have done, dude, that's what you only do two things in life. You go to work and you code, and then you come home and you practice piano. I mean, is that about right?
I have a couple of other hobbies, but like this is a primary thing. This is non-negotiable. This happens every day.
Yes, I know it does. So, okay,
yeah.
So let's talk about your journey. All right, so you came in. Let's talk first and foremost. When you started, at the very beginning, what were some of the revelations that you had that you thought to yourself, "Wow, wait a minute. I've been here before. This is kind of like what I do, but a different keyboard." So what were some of those aha moments in the beginning that you thought, wait a minute, I can do that. I can be successful. I can do this. I actually can make things up.
So I started taking jazz piano lessons before I really started like getting to the point where I was a programmer. And so I'll just start from the point where you and I started taking lessons.
Okay.
So for the longest time when I was learning how to program, I don't get this. It's very abstract. Uh, I don't understand how you use the things that are here to solve problems. And um, eventually, I got to a point where someone had pointed me towards a language that's very simple and honestly a lot like Basic. Um, and I kind of had it was so small and so self-contained that you could kind of get to a point where you could get a degree of mastery with it. And I think that comfort level got me to a point where I'm like, okay, once I've made the problem small enough, I can start to see how people would use this to solve problems.
Mm.
And I think, it's kind of the same thing there. And when we first started taking lessons, you were like, look, there's only 12 keys, Look, you held up the circle of fifths, and you did like a little pie slice, a pizza slice with your hands, and you're like, what do you see? And I'm like, I don't know. You're like, well, that's a 2-5-1. I'm like, okay, is that good? Do we like that? I had no idea what you're talking about. But now it's like, yeah, you're showing me, this is like, the
Yeah.
eye above the pyramid, this is,
Yeah.
it's all connected, man,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Well, your expression that you just said, by the way, a couple minutes ago, is absolutely golden, man. It's spot on, and I'm going to use it from now on. Of course, I won't give you credit for it, but I'm going to, because I'll take credit for it. But it's a great expression. You said, as soon as I was able to make the problem small enough, right? So I
Yeah.
think that is the key to studying jazz. We have to make the problem of creating something out of nothing, the improvisation, making stuff up. We have to make that challenge. We have to make that problem small enough so that we can succeed. And the problem in studying jazz is it typically goes the other direction.
Right.
Students get into studying jazz, they don't make the problem small enough, they make the problem too big, and it becomes
Exactly.
enormous, and it starts getting out of control. Too much information, fragmented data all over the place, to where you're drowning in it. You're drowning in it, right? So your expression, that is absolutely golden, right? We have to make the problem small enough. And I think, if you remember your first lesson, right? One of the very first things, like you just said, 12 notes, 5 primary sounds, 12 times 5, 60 chords. This is where we have to attack. We have to start here, right? So
Right.
it's the process of making the problem small enough. And I remember you grabbed onto that very, very quickly. Very, very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it helped that I had taken lessons before, and when I stopped taking lessons,
Yeah. Yeah.
I hit
Right.
a plateau.
Yeah.
And so when I came in, I was like, I'm just going to do what the guy says. I'm gonna stop pretending like I know things, and I'm paying good money. I'm just gonna do what the guy says, and I'm gonna
You
trust the
know,
process.
that's another great line that I'm going to use with new students. Just shut up and do what I tell you to do.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
make the pro-
I'm
I'll
sure
make
it'll go over well. Yeah,
yeah
yeah,
right. I'll make the problem small enough for you. Just keep your yapper shut and do what I tell you to do. How's
right.
that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So okay. So right from the very beginning, though, I remember and to this very day, 6 years later, same way. You come in. I wish I had a picture that I could hold up and show everybody. But you come in, man, dude. You always have in your left hand you have your notebook, your right hand you have your pencil, and you immediately begin taking notes, jotting stuff down, things we discuss. You make a reference to it. Um, talk talk to the listeners about that process for you, why you do it, How is it beneficial? How do you use it throughout the week when you practice this? And it's funny. You're writing stuff down. And I don't even know what you're writing down, man. I'm talking and you just write stuff down. And so I go, man, he's writing something down that's going to be very valuable for him during the week practicing. So talk to us about that whole process for you, how you do it, why you do it, and so forth.
So as far as like the journaling, like during the lesson, I'm trying to like latch on to something that I can turn into an exercise. And I would like to take credit for that, but honestly, I got it from you because you would say like, I want you to do exactly this thing, especially in the beginning. In the beginning, You're like, we're going to do exactly this thing. There's no variations.
Right.
We're going to do, boom, boom, boom. Yeah. It's going to be very clear success, failure, whether or not you were able to execute that so that you have that immediate feedback to say like, okay, well, I didn't get it on that try, but I'll try again. And I'll, eventually I'll get it enough times that I feel comfortable moving on.
Right.
And so what I would write down is like notes that would help me to help jar my memory and say like, well, what was the exercise that he was trying to teach me how to do? And I would write it down, basically in English rather than attempt to do it in music notation, which I'm kind of functionally illiterate. But I'll write out basically like, here's, we're gonna work on chord tones today. We're gonna isolate, this chord. We're gonna work on chord tones. We're gonna do them ascending and descending. We're gonna play them these different kinds of ways. We're gonna do these kinds of approachments. We're going to allow this kind of variability in here, and then there's gonna be a goal.
Right. So you're jotting down notes to reference that. So when you're home, and you said another key phrase here, whatever skill that we're attacking, the immediate question always has to be answered is, how do I practice that? How do I turn that skill into an exercise that I can actually practice? Correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, the conceptual stuff just isn't that hard. It's, we're going out on YouTube and we're buying all these books and, looking for, the golden ticket. And like the answer is the fundamentals.
Oh my gosh, man, Brad, right? I do this little routine. I've done this shtick with you before too, right? We do it. In fact, we've done it together. We do it together all the time. We're going like, look, we have 12 notes. We have 5 sounds. Those sounds can be played harmonically. Those sounds can be played melodically. When played melodically, those sounds are played using either scale motion or arpeggio motion that either travels up or down. That's music. Can you do that? If you can't do that, if you can't produce the sounds harmonically, if you can't produce the sounds melodically, and then play those sounds melodically using scale or arpeggio motion that goes up and down, I don't think we need to talk about doing anything else, do you? I mean,
right.
I mean that's really where it starts, right there.
Right. Yeah, and then you nail down like one part of it. You have an exercise you do, and you've nailed it, and you think you got it, and then you just tweak one aspect of it, and then it's hard again.
Yeah, right. That's right. It's
like this is now a challenge again.
Yeah, something that you've always embraced too in our lessons. I want you to talk about again for the listeners because I think it's so important, and you get it. In fact, you welcome it. You actually self-impose it, right? This is this idea, the concept of self-imposed constrictions. Restricting yourself to, some kind of criteria that allows you to accurately measure success or failure. So talk a little bit about that because we talk about it in our lessons. You've gravitated toward that from day one. So talk a little bit about that for you and how that's beneficial for you in your practicing.
Well, so like kind of recalling those parallels with software development, one approach, and it's not necessarily an approach I always take, but it's an approach that I like and I subscribe to, is what's called test-driven development, where you write the
Okay.
test first and then you write the code to get it to pass the test.
There you go.
And so the idea is like at the outset, you're creating your success criteria.
Right.
And for a practice session, the success criteria is I have an entry every day in the notebook that says, this is what we're going to do today.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I have that success criteria, I'm going to go through this number of keys. I'm going to do this kind of exercise, and
Yeah. Right.
that's the really structured stuff, And then there's more, there's more variable stuff that you can do. I mean,
Yeah.
but you also have to do the structured stuff, because if you don't, then you can kind of convince yourself that you're doing better than you really are,
Yeah.
because you
Oh.
could say like, well, who's to say I didn't mean to do that?
Yeah, you know what that's like? That's like the student who always says to me, I turn on a metronome or a backing track, and two measures into it, they stop and they go, I play. I got to tell you, Dr. Lawrence, I perform so much better without a metronome or without a backing track. I go, well, of course you do. Of course you do.
Because it's exposing the problem.
Yeah, of course
Yeah,
you play.
yeah.
We all play
Yeah.
better without that backing track and without that metronome. Yes.
Right.
Right. So
Until you listen back to a recording of yourself and you're like, oof,
Yeah, wait a minute.
yeah,
maybe,
my time is off.
Yeah, maybe I should welcome that backing track to help cover up some of this.
Yeah.
So anyway, self-imposed constraints, right? Self-imposed constraints that without them, it's next to impossible to be able to measure, accurately assess, pass or fail. And I guess some good examples would be, right, like improvising using just the root, third, five, and seven of a sound, right? So you restrict yourself to four notes. And, again, oftentimes when I ask a student to do this, they're a measure into it, and all of a sudden they're playing 12 notes. I'm going like, what are you doing? I mean, didn't we just say, like, you can only use the root, third, five, and seven? Well, yeah, but, I'm more creative with... I said, no, you're not more creative. You're not more creative with 12 notes, Use four notes. So we use these self-imposed constraints, right, in order to actually measure success, a pass or fail, and, like we've discussed, that actually the ability to make things up, the skill to develop the skill to make things up comes from imposing limitations upon yourself, not abundance.
Right.
Limitation. That's where creativity comes from, right?
Yeah, because if I have only four notes, like I can't just play them all as eighth notes.
No.
I can't play them all. I can't. If I play 12 notes, I can just do runs. And I could just play all the notes and do runs. But with four notes, like now you're forced to like confront the fact that you have a very finite set of pitches that you're working with. How do I create something interesting with that?
And in doing so, I have always found that with self-imposed constraints, it forces me to develop two aspects of playing jazz, of improvising, that we rarely talk about, and nobody ever talks about how to practice it, and that is repetition and the use of space. All right? So when you have very little to work with, you find out that you start repeating. And people often think that repetition is not a bad thing. Repetition is actually a very good thing. That's vocabulary. That's vocabulary that you're leaning on and you're developing, right? And space, right? Learning how to play space, vitally important. So through limitations, I have found repetition and space surface as two skills that are being developed that would never be developed if I just gave myself unlimited possibilities to ramble, on and on, to doodle endlessly.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay, very good, man. So, all right. So, let's talk about some of the skill sets that you've been working on, and share with, and then we'll share how you're practicing some of these skill sets. Okay. So, let's start with voicings. Voicings is always, piano players are always talking about chords. Piano players are talking about how to voice those chords to sound like jazz. So share with us a little bit about your voicing approach, how you practice voicings on a week-to-week basis.
Okay. So you have kind of stock voicings that you've shared, in like early episodes of the podcast. You had
Yeah, yeah,
stock voicings that you shared,
yeah,
and eventually you get to a point, I guess, with most students where you're like, okay, those are the stock voicings, and now I want you to go and create the other voicings using similar structures that would allow you to target any note inside of a chord scale relationship.
yeah. There you go. Yep.
And the goal there being that eventually you want to get to a point where you could use those voicings to outline a melody. You could play a chord melody or melodic harmonization, whatever you want to call
Yeah.
it. And so, in order to get that kind of fluency with those voicings, then you need to go back and say, well, I'm going to use these voicings. I'm going to play, for instance, a sound like C minor, and I'm going to play the leading tone of each one of those voicings and outline the chords
Yeah.
and outline the scales and move between the chord tones and move between the scale tones and do approachments and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and have different starting and ending entry points, all the stuff that you talk about, like we're gonna enter the sound, we have to be able to enter the sound from any point because we don't know where we're going to be.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, Brad, because you're right. I usually start with stock voicings, and I call them like option A, option B. Option A, option B. And then what you're talking about is after you have the option A's and option B's down, you immediately begin, you go, those turn into four. And the four that I always turn those voicings into is that sound with the root on top, whatever, like the minor sound with the root on top, minor sound with the third on top, minor sound with the fifth on top, minor sound with the seventh on top. So now I'm outlining the arpeggio, like you're just talking about. Now I'm actually playing an arpeggio. So going back to our improvisation example for a second, if I'm improvising, if I work on improvisation using four notes, C, E flat, G, B flat for C minor, and I'm sitting there and I got a nice groove and I have a nice articulation and I have a nice feel and I'm improvising. I'm using space and repetition, using those four notes as single notes. The idea, what you're talking about, is, well, now shouldn't I be able to do that with those same four notes, but have those same four notes harmonized,
Right.
as opposed to a single note? And of course the answer is yeah. Yeah, and of course the answer is yes, right? So now stock voicings become four voicings. They turn into four, and those four that I always like to teach are four based on the primary entry points: root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh, right? And then those four turn into adding the passing tones between those four, which now become the scale harmonized, right?
Right.
And so that's where you are, man. That's the kind of stuff that you're doing right now, and you're doing it beautifully, right? You're starting to really settle into being able to understand this kind of a chord scale relationship or a sound scale relationship, and being able to then harmonize the notes within that sound. And do you ever stop and think about that for a second, about how far you've come to be able to that you're actually doing that and practicing that, as opposed to, I mean, thinking back to when you were going like, okay, C minor is what now? C, E flat, G, right? From that to what you're doing right now.
Right. Yeah. When you first start doing it, it's very it takes a long time to just make the shape. and
Right.
you have to like sit there and think about, where your hands go for every single note. And eventually you get to a point where you've done this so many times, you've used these voicings in so many different kinds of ways that your hand just makes the shape. And you can start to outline chords, and you can do it pretty quickly. You get to a point where you move beyond thinking about individual notes.
Yeah.
You're playing the entire shape at once. And I don't necessarily even see the notes.
Yeah, that's right.
I just feel them.
That's right. Boy, that's great too, right? You don't see them, you feel them, right? The hands, and it's almost as if the hands say to you, "Hey, Brad, relax, man. We got it.
Right.
We'll take.
Yeah.
We got you covered. Don't worry about it. We got you covered."
Right. Right. Yeah. I'm not consciously. Yeah. When you're very early in your process of learning a new skill, you're very conscious and deliberate, and you're very analytical about it. But then you have to get to a point where you've ingrained it to the point where you don't have to think about it. And if you do have to think about it, you don't know it well enough.
Yeah, and you know what? You just touched upon another point that's very important, right? Quite often, the individual studying jazz at the beginning wants to skip over that analytical part and get to that instinctual muscle memory, oral memory part, right? And it's the analytical part that's so crucial, that I call it the grunt work, right? Where you have to kind of sit there and think through it, map it out, get your notebook out, get your pen out, sketch it out, draw it out, spell it out. And oftentimes the student will say to me, "Do you really think like that when you play?" And I go, "No,
Right.
heavens, no. I think like that when I practice, so that when I play, I can actually do what you're talking about, where the hands take over, and I'm feeling the shapes as opposed to I'm not thinking about the individual notes in the shape, right?"
Right.
Yeah, that grunt work, man. That conceptual grunt work is so important. Like, the paper practice, as I like to call it, so important. Right.
Yeah.
There's really no. You think you could, right? I had a teacher who used to say, "Bob, the longest way to get anywhere is a shortcut." So, hey, man, you better just sit down with the pad of paper and sketch this out and start thinking through this, because otherwise
Yeah.
you're taking the long way around and you'll never get there. So, okay, so you're doing fantastic voicing work, very high level stuff. Okay, now let's talk about just some good old fashioned grunt work, your scale practice and arpeggio practice, right? That develops technical agility, technical skills, hand mobility on the instrument. What kind of things are you doing during the week to cover this aspect of playing, these skills?
So recently, we've been working on we're going to isolate a sound, and we're going to play either the chord tones of the sound, or we're going to move through the sound in sevenths, from the root to the seventh, and the third to the ninth, and the 5 to 11th, and the 7 to the 13th. We're going to move through that sound, and we're going to play 5 different ways of outlining either the chord tones or the extensions. And we're gonna play them ascending. We're gonna play them descending. We're gonna play them a single note. We're gonna double them. And we're gonna play like a red garland kind of root 5 root block in the right hand, and where the roots are going to be, the root, the third, the 5, the 7th.
Yep.
We're going to do locked hands. We're going to do two-handed voicings. We're going to do all of those, and the goal will always be the same. We're outlining the root, third, and 5, 7th, and we're doing an ascending or descending, or we're doing 3 through 9th, or whatever. And we're gonna go through and do all 5 of those skills: the single note, the double, the red garland, the locked hands, and the two-handed voicings, the 5-note chordal two-handed voicings.
Man, dude, I'm sitting here holding back tears, man, because I just want to cry. I just want to cry with joy, because I'm telling you, man, this is what's so fun. I just love this because, again, I had a teacher who used to say, "Bob, I know how you're progressing by the comments that you make and the questions you ask." And of course, when I was a kid, I had no idea what the heck he was talking about. But you know, it's so true, right? All I got to do is listen to it. All I have to do is listen to somebody describe what they're practicing and how they're practicing it, and I can tell you exactly where they are in the process, right? And the fact that you have such a laser, you know, accurate, pinpoint accuracy in terms of, okay, I'm practicing a sound. I'm actually taking the primary, you know, the fragments of that sound, whether it be the root to the 7 or the 3rd to the 9th and so forth. I'm going to take the entry points within that geographical range. I'm going to orchestrate. I'm going to orchestrate that range, that region of the sound. I'm going to orchestrate that with using a single note line to a unison line like an Oscar Peterson would play in both hands, the Red Garland style, the George Shearing locked hand style, or the chordal voicing, more contemporary Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea kind of approach. The fact that you can catalog all this, the fact that you can label it, the fact that you can describe it in relationship to how you're applying it to a sound, right? Do you ever just stop to think about just, wow, how far you've come? I mean, to have that kind of organizational thought process is what, honestly, and I hope you would agree, honestly, that's why you're having the physical success that you're having on the instrument, because guess what? It's organized, it's clean, it's tidy, it's structured up here conceptually, so that when you do go to the keys, you can maximize your practice time by applying what you've already thought through conceptually. Thoughts?
Yeah, that's fair. Because I mean, these skills aren't ends in themselves, right?
Right.
But the idea is that you can reuse them in different contexts. You can play any one of those 5 things that we just rattled off. Any one of those can be used to play a melody.
100%. That's why we're doing it. That's why we're doing it.
That's exactly the reason why you do it. Yeah, exactly. And any one of those 5 things can be used to improvise.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And some of them even harmonize. You know, you're playing the chord tones, you're playing the changes. So you're both improvising and providing harmonic support at the same time.
Yeah.
In some cases.
And think about this, Brad. Think about how this points back to the very first days, the very first weeks of lessons. Remember the 60 chords? Root, 3rd, 5, 7 of major, dominant, minor, half, diminished, and then the inverted shapes of those chords. I tell every student when we start right there, I said, you don't know this, but this is the best improvisation exercise you'll ever do. And they're going, huh? Because they think of it as, you know, if you're plopping your hands down on the piano going conk, 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 you're thinking that you're playing chords. You're thinking, I'm practicing chords, right? And yes,
right.
But it's those shapes that allow that you hold on to, that you hug forever in developing advanced skills, because those skill sets, those advanced skills are applied to those shapes.
Yeah. If you're not playing them on some level, then you're not playing the changes.
That's correct. That's exactly right. 100%. That's right. And don't you find too, I mean, you came from a classical background, right? I know you had the classical lessons, you had the violin lessons and that. But I think also it's so important. You had just mentioned root to 7, 3rd to 9, 5 to 11, 7 to 13, these various entry points and destination points. I think that the biggest mistake that, or I think the biggest transition that a jazz musician needs to make from the classical world to the jazz world is to stop thinking of playing your scales from root to root over and over, again and again, somehow thinking that this is going to turn you into Oscar Peterson, because it's not.
You're the only person I know who teaches it this way. I've had a handful of piano teachers. You're the only person I know who talks about this.
Yeah, and I it's mind blowing to me, because That's when my ears really started to grow, was when I started to become consciously aware of an entry point and a destination point. I'm traveling from the third of the sound to the ninth of the sound, or from the fifth to the 11th, because now I'm listening for that. I'm actually consciously listening for those sounds, right?
Yeah.
And when I was playing scales, and believe me, I did it faithfully, man, for years, root to root, root to root, root to root, root to root, and I can remember sitting there thinking, man, I don't know how this is going to help, but everybody tells me to do it, so I'm just going to keep doing it. But my ears were turned off. My ears were turned off. They were just hearing tonic to tonic, tonic to tonic, tonic to tonic, tonic to tonic, up and down, right? So I'm not saying there isn't any value in that. I'm just saying from a jazz musician's perspective, with the development of the ear, I would strongly advise the various entry points, so that you get used to practicing the entire sound from the root to the 13th of the sound, right?
Yeah. If for no other reason, then it changes the success criteria, and you're going to have to sit there and listen and make sure that you're doing the exercise the way that it's supposed to be.
Yeah. So, okay. So let's talk about, let's move on and talk about, because we have been hitting it hard in your lessons, applying all these various skill sets that you've been working on, actually applying them to tunes, playing tunes, a lot of different standards. You came in with a top 10 list of standards that you wanted to attack, which were all like golden, great standards. And you were very successful learning them and playing through them. So talk to the listeners a little bit about your approach when you decide, I'm going to learn such and such standard. What's kind of the agenda that you have in place that you utilize to start digesting this tune?
Well, the first thing that I do is I put together a playlist of a bunch of different versions.
You're gonna make me cry again, man.
Yeah, and some of those actually are out of this.
Oh yeah,
Joy is
yeah,
the jazz standards. Yeah,
yeah.
he has like some information about the tune, and then he'll have like his recommended recordings.
Right.
And so I'll make a playlist, and I'll usually start with his if it's in the book, and sometimes it's not. And then I'll go out and try to find versions from different artists. If there's lyrics, I'll try to learn vocal versions.
Good, very good.
And then I'll just look for names that I recognize or artists that I like. And I'll have a playlist of, anywhere from 5 to 20 songs, or 5 to 20 versions of any given song.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that you're doing, with this playlist, sometimes you're doing active listening, sometimes you're doing passive listening. You could have it on in the car while you're driving or doing dishes or whatever, right? I mean, you just start listening.
It's mostly passive listening. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah, it's mostly passive listening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll just sit there and have it on repeat for, a day, 2 days. It kind of depends on how complicated
Yeah.
the melody is. But
Yeah,
I'll just sit there and listen to it over and over and over again.
very
And
good.
I'll do like different versions of it so that I don't get sick of hearing the same song over and over and over again. And if there's lyrics, I'll try to learn the lyrics.
Yes.
And because it not only does it tell you like the emotional content of the song, but it creates that it helps just ingrain and lock in the melody. If you know the words.
And the phrasings within the melody, the various
Absolutely,
phrases.
yeah.
Yeah. So, so when you go ahead and do that melody, I'm curious. I think I know the answer. But do you when you start learning that melody on the keyboard, are you reading that from a fake book, or are you sitting there poking it out and finding it based on all the listening that you've done?
Yeah, I don't use the fake book. I used to like years ago, but no longer. You're kind of cheating yourself by taking the easy way out, right? You're kind of cheating yourself.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, not only from an ear perspective, but you're cheating yourself from the perspective of sounding like a jazz musician as well. Because if you're going to try to read it, it's not it just will not be the same. It's just not the same.
Yeah. If you play out of the real book and you play the notes literally like they are written,
Oh,
it sounds unmusical.
oh my
And
gosh.
and it's not that it's wrong.
No, but it's mathematical. It's just mathematical.
Right.
That's what
It's
music
notation.
notation. That's what it is. Yes. It's
Right.
math.
Yeah, it forces things into a box.
That's exactly right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's excellent. So okay, you start poking the melody around. You do the chord changes. Something that I know that you do, which is really 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 good. I want to bring it up so listeners hear it. You know, you have the iReal Pro app, which is very popular. Everybody seems to have it. It's a great practice tool. But what I love, and I mentioned this to you years ago, and you made the switch, and you haven't gone back. And that is, you have iReal Pro set up as the default being number notation. You don't read chord changes.
No, no, I don't. And it's the same for Band in the Box. They're both
Yeah.
set to Nashville notation.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So you just
Yeah.
read again. You're doing a great favor for the ears. You're doing a great favor
Right.
for the ears, man.
Well, and to be able to just see the structure of the song. Because like if I switch over to the chord symbols, like the actual chord symbols, like I mean I can work it out, but you're not seeing like the underlying structure of how you're moving through chords, how you're moving through keys, how you're going out and coming back, and
Yeah,
you're just seeing chord symbols, and that's again you're shortchanging yourself
yeah.
if you're not.
Because chord symbols do not illuminate relationships. They don't.
No, they don't.
The,
No, they don't.
the
Mm-hmm.
numbers illuminate a relationship. 1 to 6 means something. 2 to
Right.
5 means something, right?
Right.
If you're reading just chord symbols and you see D minor 7 to G7, what's the relationship there?
Right. And if you go from one song to another and they change keys, you don't know that these are the same relationships.
There you go. And then your ear locks into those relationships. You start, oh, wow, okay, now I know what that is.
Yeah, that's a 1 6 2 5 or that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, right.
or whatever. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I think it's fabulous because I love it. Every time you pull up your iReal Pro or whatever, I look over and there's the numbers. I go, yeah, very good. Excellent. Excellent. So, okay, so fast forward a little bit. So you got the chord changes, you got those under your hands, you got the melody, you've done your listening, you've got the melody put together. Then what do you do? Where do you go from there?
Okay. So we've learned the melody, right?
Yep.
And maybe I have to slow it down.
Yep.
If it's particularly tricky, I'll use like a slow downer app and like loop it if I need to, or
Yeah.
But eventually I get to the point where I'm picking it out by ear on the keyboard and I can play through it. And at some point, I'll switch over to doing it. I'll do it with the recording, and then at some point I'll switch over to doing it with like Band in the Box or a backing track or something like that.
Right.
And I would like to get to a point, and I would like to get to a point where I'm learning the changes by ear as well. I can kind of I've done it in some cases, but I'm just not doing it consistently.
Yeah, yeah, that comes. That
Yeah.
In fact, it's coming. I mean, it's already. You're hearing. I guarantee you're already hearing things like, "Oh, wait a minute, that's a 2-5-1," or that's like you
Oh,
said.
absolutely.
That's what
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
you're already
Yeah.
because for that to fully come to the surface, you have to hear root movement. You got to hear root movement.
Right.
That's why having everything in a number notation is so important, because now your ears are starting to hear the root movement. And then after you hear the root movement, then you can start to go, oh, that's major, or that's dominant, or that's minor, right? But yeah, the root movement is absolutely the very first step, necessary. Yes.
Yeah. I'll have the changes, right? And I can play with the recording and I can play with the backing track, and I agree with the changes, or I don't, and I'll look around and try to tweak them, and I'll cross reference with a couple of different sources, or you know, however, or I'll just say, hey, can you send me these, and you'll send them.
Yeah, yeah,
But in any case, I'll be able to play the melody with the backing track, and then I'll start to add in root movement in the left hand, and sometime I'll literally just play the root, and be able to do that while also playing the melody in the right hand, and then I'll add in shells later, and I'll have shells in the melody, and it depends on the context in which I want to play it, but I might, play through and do voicings, just like two-handed voicings, like I'm comping with
yeah.
somebody.
Oh, very good. Yes, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then from there you start to build out like a treatment of it, an
yeah,
arrangement, a head arrangement of it,
yeah,
whatever you want to call it.
yeah.
And
So you have
from there you can apply these different skills. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So you have these steps that you're going through. One of the things that you started doing now that we've started doing that I think is having a very profound impact on your treatment, on your delivery of the melody and playing of the tune, is actually playing the melody right hand only as you sit on your left hand. No left hand at all. Just playing the melody of the tune, right?
Yeah.
And talk about that for a second, because we just recently started doing that. What have you discovered? What have you discovered by just saying, you know what, I'm gonna let Band in the Box, or I'm gonna let iReal Pro do the heavy lifting. I'm gonna let that software play the changes and establish the tempo and the rhythm section and so forth, and I'm going to be the vocalist. I'm going to be the instrumentalist, and I'm just going to play this melody in my right hand. Talk a little bit about what you've discovered since you've started doing that.
Okay. You lower the water level and you can see the kraken, So, if there's less going on and you're not trying to, do too much, then you're forced to confront the inadequacies of the way that you're playing the melody, and you're forced to try to play it as well as you can, because there's nothing else.
Nothing else.
So
Exposed.
right, your playing is exposed, and the question that you have to ask yourself, especially if you're recording it and listening back to it, is, does this sound musical?
Yes. Yeah.
Does it sound like music? And if the answer is no, then okay, why not?
Yeah.
And what would you have to change to make it sound? You're never going to be totally satisfied, but what would make it better?
Yeah, yeah, a good question. When I do this kind of work, the question I'm always asking myself, Brad, is this: would I sit and listen to somebody play melodies of tunes all night like I just played it? Would I do that? And if the answer is no, I got work to do. And I just, FYI, the answer is always no. But anyway, because you're always wanting to get better. But the point being is that if you're playing that melody really, really well, if you're swinging that melody, or you're playing a ballad and it's emotionally locked in, it's nobody. You don't miss. You're not going to miss anything else. There's nothing that's missing. There's nothing that's missing. And if there's somebody that can play melodies all night long, that sounds fantastic. I will sit there and listen to somebody play melodies all night long that plays them well. And we don't need anything else. Because as you said a few lessons ago, because the melody is the tune. It is the tune. That's the song.
That is the song.
That is the song. That is the song. Right? So I can't encourage folks to do that enough, right? right hand melody work, sit on the left hand. And plus, we've talked about this too, right? It puts chords back in their proper perspective. It puts chords back in their place, right? It puts voicings back in their place. We tend to, as jazz pianists, we put these chords and these voicings up on a pedestal, and we kind of worship them, like, wow, man, look at this voicing, look at this chord, look at this, right?
We have an embarrassment of riches.
Yes, exactly right. That's exactly right.
And the single note players don't.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
They're forced to confront it. We're not. We can hide.
We can hide. We can hide.
Yeah.
And often we do. Piano players often do. They get, the left hand is way out of control, way too busy, just way too much going on. It's just out of control. So yeah, your tune work that you've been doing over the last several months has been fabulous, and I've just witnessed a ton of growth with that as well. So, man, do you sometimes pinch yourself? Because I mentioned to you a couple weeks ago. I mentioned to you. I said, "Hey, Brad, you know what? I can't remember what tune we were doing, but we just finished." I said, "Man, dude, if you had a couple dozen tunes like that, dude, you go out and play gigs all night in the Dallas area. I mean, you're at that level where you're playing, and it's very enjoyable. And man, do you sometimes pinch yourself that you've gotten this far?"
I think that's a good goal, honestly. Yeah, I think not anything fancy, like a background wallpaper gig, whatever you want to call it. But I think that keeps me on, like, making sure that what I'm playing sounds like music.
Oh, dude, you're real close, man. Having a little trio, doing a little coffee shop somewhere, man. Playing a little couple sets. I mean, that'd be awesome. That'd be fantastic.
Yeah,
I'll be there. I'll be there, man. I'll be there with my favorite beverage.
Yeah.
So, all right, man. What else?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty happy with where things are. Yeah, and it's always 10 yards from where you currently are.
Listen,
but you have to appreciate where you are.
Yeah, because right. I mean, we're in it for the long haul, right? It's the study of jazz pianos. It's a long game. It's for life, and there's always room for improvement. There's always room for growth. That's what makes it exciting. That's what makes it fun. We're always chasing, like I like to say, we're chasing that dangling carrot, and if that wasn't there, if this was like a model airplane, put it together and put it on the shelf and we're done. I mean, we wouldn't be here right now. I mean, who cares, right? So it's a lifelong, and you know what? Aren't you glad you have something like this for the rest of your life? I mean, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you said. There's you want to be able to be. It's the journey, not the destination. I mean, it's a kind of a cliche, but it's absolutely true. Like, you get more enjoyment out of the pursuit of the thing. Once you have the thing, you're like, what's next?
What's next? Yeah, what's next?
Yeah,
we got to go to the next challenge here. Yeah,
right.
So all right, man. What words of inspiration, encouragement, support would you offer up for Jazz Piano Skills listeners from around the world that are checking this out right now and listening to you? What advice would you like to offer up, man?
If you want to do this, you're probably going to be capable of doing it. And you're going to get stuck, and that's fine. And when you get stuck, sometimes you just got to grind through it, and sometimes you need help. And but I think that more than natural talent, whatever that means, desire, and the wanting to do it, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be this, but whatever you want to do, if you want to do it, you're going to figure out a way to become decent at it.
Yeah, and you do not have to play like Oscar Peterson to play good jazz.
No, you can. Yeah. I'm not necessarily saying that if you want to do it, you're going to be super pro level, but you're gonna be decent if you want to do it and you work hard enough and you work long enough.
Well, that's right. That's exactly right. Yeah. Oftentimes, folks will ask me. They'll come in and they go, "You think I could actually learn how to play the piano?" I go, "Hold up your hands." They hold up their hands. I count the fingers. I go, "Yeah, you qualify. You qualify. You're good."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, man, I'll tell you what, man, it's such a joy. Listen, I can't thank you enough for, like I said, carving out time to come on and share your story and your thoughts and your ideas with the jazz piano skills community. So many folks are going to benefit from your pearls of wisdom today. So I can't thank you enough. And on a personal note, Brad, I got to thank you for the last 6 years, man. It's been a joy to work with you and share jazz piano studies with you and watch your growth and just watch you develop into a very fine jazz pianist, man. And I can't wait to see where we go from here. But congratulations to you and thank you again for coming on Jazz Piano Skills. Very much appreciated.
Thank you. I appreciate everything that you do, and I wish you success with Jazz Piano Skills in the Dallas School of Music. I think you guys are doing great things.
Well, great, man. Hey, I would be remiss if I didn't say this. Remember when you came in for your lesson one time and I was recording something?
Yeah.
And I said, well, you said, what are you doing? I said, hey, man, I'm kind of thinking about doing like this audio lesson, and you literally go, well, that sounds like a podcast. I said,
yeah.
I said, maybe I'll do a podcast. That was the start, dude.
Yeah, that was, yeah. And you're like, you gave me the idea, and I'm like, I thought that's what you were describing.
No, I was thinking around on my computer going like, can I record my voice just saying something that, share with somebody? And that was so funny because you said, that sounds like a podcast. I went,
yeah.
I guess you're right, man. and as the old saying goes, and the rest is history. So anyway, all right, Brad, have a great weekend, my friend. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family, and we'll see you after the holidays.
All right, happy Thanksgiving. I'll see you on Tuesday.
Yeah, thank you, man. Bye.
Bye.